What's shaking, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shay, and today we're going to chat about what I read in the month of August. So in August, I completed a total of 14 things, which rounds up to 5,872 pages. I actually wound up reading more pages than that if you count the 3 DNFs I had this month. So without further ado, let's just get into it. You guys know that I've been trying to wean down some series, so I did do kind of a good job with that, and I apologize. I'm kind of nasally because I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so sorry about that. First up, let's talk about all the DNFs I had this month. I had 3 of them, and the first one that I DNF'd was Black Flame by Will White. So listen to me, I have been very vocal on my channel as I've been reading the Unsold series that I am not particularly a fan of this series, and I said in my last video that I would give this series one more shot before I decided to DNF the series, and unfortunately I got about over 60% of the way into this third book in the series and decided to go ahead and DNF it. This series definitely has its audience. I really enjoyed the first half of book 1. We are following our main character, Lyndon, who basically lives in this little village in this world where there is magic, and he sticks his hand in the bowl and he realizes and finds out that he doesn't have magic, and this is basically crippling in this society. He is looked down upon, he can't do anything, and of course an event happens. And he's always been told he cannot go outside of the boundaries of like his world and village because it is a terrible, wild world out there and with lots of danger. And so something happens and he goes outside of this world, and that's where our story kind of begins. And I would say that this is definitely for fans that like training montage sequences like in movies or described in books, because I felt like that's what we're doing. So Lyndon doesn't have magic, so he decides and he is determined to level up his magic on his own. And so we get a lot of the training, we get a lot of his determination, and I'm gonna be honest, I just found it slightly boring. So I understand that the further you go in the series, I say the better it gets, but I'm sorry. This I just know is not going to be a series for me, and so I went ahead and DNF'd the series. My next DNF was Firefight by Brandon Sanderson. I had a very good idea that I was going to be DNFing this, and I got 39% into this one and just decided to put it down and realized that it just was not for me. So the first one to this series is Steelheart, and it follows basically there are these not superheroes, but they are super villains, and they have taken over the world basically. And in the number 1 book, we are in a world that was Chicago, now it's called New Chicago, and it has been taken on. And then we have these human rebels that are going to rise up and try to defeat these super villains. So it's an interesting premise. With this, I just was bored and I did not connect with the characters. And if I don't connect with the characters, I just cannot get in with the story. But I did spoil myself. I read recaps for the rest of the books, and I'm happy to know what happened, but I just know that this was not a series for me. Another book that I DNF'd this month, and the last one, is going to be The Crimson Queen by Alex Hudson. This is a self-published novel. I got about 50% in and just could not connect with the characters again. This follows basically our protagonist Kieran, and he is just this fisherman's son, and he realizes that he has some magical abilities, and of course where he lives magical abilities are forbidden. So he gets rescued by some people and taken out from the village, and then they go on journeying and traveling, and there's a Crimson Queen, and there's all this great world building. However, I just could not connect with the characters, and I didn't like the fact that we were journeying and traveling through a lot of the book, because that is one thing that I just can't jive with in fantasies. So without further ado, that is all of my DNFs. Let's get into the books that I did read. Coming in at number 14 with a 2-star rating is gonna be Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. I've read Tessa Bailey before. This is the worst Tessa Bailey I believe I have ever read. This follows our main character, Georgie, I want to say, and she is basically falling in love with her brother's best friend. And he is a ex-football player who got injured, and he's very depressed and everything, and she's gonna save him from his depression. She has always had a crush on him. The steamy scenes were cringe in this. The dialogue was cringe, I felt, and it was not realistic at all. So I would, if I were you, stay away from it. I don't recommend it, but I do realize that some people would like it. So the next coming in at 13, these are my 3-star reads. The One by Kiera Cass, which is the next in the trilogy that starts with the Selection series. Now this one, you know, I can't really give a lot of information about this without giving spoilers because it is a 3rd book in the series. I'm not sure, there's 2 more after it that have a time jump, and I'm not quite sure that I'm going to continue on with them. But this concluded our series. It is a fantasy romance, light on the fantasy, heavy on the romance. That's kind of like a Bachelor style story. So I'm not going to say much more than that. I'm sure most of you have heard about the Selection series by now. The next one that I finished up on a series is going to be Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mahir, and I gave this 3 stars. This one starts with Serpent and Dove. Serpent and Dove was by far the best book in the trilogy to me. This starts out with basically a world where witches are terrible, and then you have people that are fighting against the witches, and of course you have a love interest, and so there's some, of course, humans versus witches wars going on, and this ends this trilogy. I thought it was fine. I'm not going to lie, she tried to bring this last book back to the magic of what happened in the first book, and I don't want to spoil it, but the first book was basically enemies to lovers and their love story getting together, and I think that's why it was a lot more popular and why people liked it so much, and then it kind of meandered from there. In this 3rd book, she uses a plot device to kind of bring that magic back. So it's very interesting for sure, but I still gave it 3 stars. Overall, it was an okay series. Coming in at number 11, I also completed another series. That's going to be Flyaway by Kristen Hanna. The first book in this is going to be Firefly Lane, which I gave 5 stars. I loved it. This takes place after the events of Firefly Lane, and if you know what happened at the end of Firefly Lane, we're now continuing on that story, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but this one, typically I liked it. I didn't love it. A lot of people, I've read reviews on this, don't like the mother relationship between, I think it's Tully and her mother, and I didn't mind it. Like, they were saying they didn't care to hear about her mother, but I didn't mind it. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was fine, but it did not compare to Firefly Lane, which I loved. Book number 10, I also finished a series, and that is going to be A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This starts with Darker Shade of Magic, and if you don't know what this series is, especially there's multiple different Londons, and there are these magical beings, well, 1 or 2 magical beings that live in this world that can travel between each London. Some Londons have magic, some others don't. Then you have people getting jealous because this London has magic, this doesn't. You can't take objects in between worlds, and it is a little bit complicated, but I did finish this up. I did enjoy it. I did end up liking the characters. But overall, this was just, again, a 3-star series. It's not one that I would gravitate towards again or reread. Number 9 is going to be the start of my 4-star reads. So coming in at number 9 is going to be The Haunting of Tramcar 015, and this is one of the ones in the Jinn series. The full-length novel is Master of Jinn, and then you have these novellas that come before that, and this is just kind of Jinn mystery, and I liked it. This is a novella. It is super short, but I overall enjoyed the mystery of a haunting of a tram car, and they're trying to figure out what happened, why it's haunted, and how to get rid of the hauntings. So really enjoyed it. Quick read, and eventually I am leading up to reading Master of Jinn. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Evershore. I finally finished the last Skyward Flight novella that I had, and this takes place after the 3rd novel, and this follows our main character Jorgen. And I cannot give spoilers, but these novellas, if you read Skyward novels, these novellas are essential to the story. I think if you don't read them, you will not grasp the story. And I think in preceding novels, like when they come back together in this 4th novel that should be coming out in the next year or so, I think that you will be lost. So definitely read these novellas. They are short and entertaining and highly recommend. The next one to wrap up a duology, I read Vow of Thieves by Mary Pearson. This starts out with our first novel, Dance of Thieves, where we have our 2 main characters. One of them is kind of like the king of his village that is not really recognized by the kingdom, and the other one is a worker of the kingdom, and she is going to investigate some crimes that have been reported that this kingdom that's not recognized what they're doing. So it starts from there. That's how the first one starts out. Of course, there's love, there's rebellion, and I literally like this one more so than the first. I know a lot of people like this duology. I gave the first one 3 stars. I just felt like it was more romance than fantasy, and I'm like the opposite. I like more fantasy than romance, and this one kind of brought the fantasy back in. Lots of political aspects in this one, wrapped it up nicely. I gave it 4 stars, and overall I would recommend this duology for anybody that likes fantasy romance. The next book, number 6, is going to be Blood of Heirs by Alicia Winstall Burke. Now, I'm not sure which year that this came into a finalist in SPFBO, but this is a self-published fantasy novel that is following 2 characters, and this first one seems very much like a setup book. We're getting the world, we're getting what's happening, what is going to be going forward, and we're following 2 characters. One is from this kingdom, and she is the heir, and all she wants to do is go fight in the battle. She wants to learn war. She wants to be the heir of her kingdom, but her mother does not wish that for her. She wants her to just get married and just be a lady, and so they kind of have a dynamic there, and there's some magic that comes up about to the surface, and just kind of her battling to show her mother and show everybody that she is willing to be the heir and she wants to be the heir, and it's her fighting for her place. And she's only 12 years old at this time. And then we're following in another part of the world, we're following 15-year-old Rand, who is a duke's son, and he also wants to be a leader. He wants to lead in battle. He begs his father to let him lead a battle, and he ends up losing. And so then he has to kind of fight. He's fighting to gain the respect back from when he lost the battle. And then some supernatural things occur, and again, magic comes up, and there's some creatures and some monsters in this, and I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait for the next books in this series so that I can see these 2 characters come together and see what's in store next. The next one coming in at number 5 is Heartstopper Volume 4, which of course is the last volume that's out right now. 2 boys in love, and just so cute, and I really like the way this tackles heavier topics. If you don't know what Heartstopper is, I mean, you should be reading it. What are you doing? But definitely heavier topics, trigger warnings for, eating disorders for sure, and I really liked it, loved it, and can't wait for the next and final volume to come out. I have not watched the Netflix show yet, but I'm hoping to sometime soon. Coming in at number 4, I read Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. So this is a very weird kind of world. This is definitely a sci fantasy, and we're following multiple different perspectives. We have these kind of vampire-like creatures who basically prolong their life by the sap of a tree. And then something happens and their tree dies, and so they can no longer prolong their life by the sap of a tree. So they have learned that they can drink human blood to kind of prolong their life. However, human blood carries a disease, and then they are diseased and dying out from drinking human blood. And so we have one of these Aborans is what they're called, that kind of goes out into the world, and he becomes a bodyguard for this other character named Vintage. And Vintage is out to figure out what is the deal with these aliens that continue to attack their planet every so often. So there have been 8 reigns so far where basically these aliens have come, they've attacked and this world, and the tree that's now dead produces these kind of bots or whatever that have so far been successful in holding these aliens off. But what's going to happen now that the tree is dead? And so Vintage is kind of figuring out kind of discovering what these aliens want, who they are, when are they going to attack, how are they going to attack, and one of the Aborans is become her bodyguard. So we are having those perspectives, and then we have another perspective, Noon, who is a witch. And so this is kind of like, it is so weird when you're reading it, but it's so entertaining. And so definitely it's got some aliens, creatures, monsters vibes, and I can't wait to continue on. I thought that it was very unique. I've heard people say that this is not a unique story, but I found it very unique. I found the characters unique, and I found the writing unique, and I'm hoping to continue on sometime soon. Number 3 is going to be A Reaper at the Gates by Saba Sahir. We're continuing on the Ember and the Ashes series. This is number 3 in the series, so I can't say much about it, but this basically follows our 2 characters, Laya and Elias, and Laya is basically, the government has killed some of her family, it's taken her brother off to jail, and Elias is the son of a commander that's very violent, kills, and he is part of the government. So Laya is against the government and Elias works for the government. And of course, it's going to end up in rebellion and trying to overthrow the government and some love. So I'm continuing to enjoy this series. I think that it is a great political series, and honestly, I think that it's really a great segue into adult fantasy just because the politics and everything are so phenomenal. And so I'm continuing to love it. I gave it 4 stars, and I can't wait to continue and finish this quartet next month, hopefully. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Voice of War by Zach Argyle, and this is a self-pub trilogy. The 3rd one just came out. This is the 1st in the trilogy, and I was very surprised at how much I really liked this world and this book. So in this world, we have our government, and we're following one of the characters that kind of works high up in the government, and he is a thread weaver, and different color eyes kind of equate what a thread weaver can do, but they can generally push and pull on things. And so they are investigating these blood thieves that have been kidnapping these thread weavers and have been taking their blood so that they can take them and become a thread weaver and kind of get high off of it, and they've become addicted. And so they've been taking these thread weavers and they've been draining their blood and killing them. And so it starts out as that, and trying to figure out why they're taking the blood and who is taking the blood. And then there's other characters that come in, and we find out reveals, and there's twists and turns. And it is a short book, and there are so many twists and turns in there that it's just so entertaining. The world building is fantastic, and I really enjoy the characters, so highly recommend this if any of this sounds interesting to you. And then coming in at number 1, my favorite book of the month is going to be Changes by Jim Butcher. So everybody kept telling me, you know, changes. It's going to be fantastic. And I was like, I don't understand. And then we got to the ending, and I was like, I understand. I love this. I love Dresden, and I love how his character is building. I am not a fan of the earlier Dresden books as much as other people seem to be. I thought it was just a mediocre series, you know, until we get real into the series, and then he really starts growing as a character. You can see that Jim Butcher's writing has really improved, really matured, and I love the way the story is going, and I cannot wait to continue on. And this book really sealed my Dresden love, and I can't wait to continue on and finish what is left of this, what is currently out in the series. So highly recommend Dresden. I will say that this is one of those series that you kind of have to keep reading and reading to get better. However, I am entertained by every single book in the series, but as it goes further, it just gets into so much detail and so much world building and so much things that tie back into just so many twists and turns, and I really enjoy it, and highly recommend the Dresden Files. Okay, everyone, that's it. That is all I read in the month of August. And I'm hoping that I can have a very successful September now that I've kind of finished some series, but I've started some new ones. But I'm really excited about what I'm reading. I'm really excited about what September holds. And I hope you guys are doing all kind of well. Let me know what you read in the month of August and what your favorite books were down in the comments. And I will catch you guys later.